Okay. Hello. We're going to start the meeting today. We are here on Wednesday, October 25th for the Education, Environment, and Sustainability Committee meeting. Can we have roll call, please, Madam Clerk?
Calling the roll, Ms. Simon. Ms. Brown. Here. Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent at the moment. Mr. Schron. Here. Mr. Brady. Here. Councilman Miller. Here.
There is a quorum.
Thank you. Can we have anybody signing up for public comment?
Yes, Madam Clerk. Mr. Brand.
Switch it to them.
Ah, there we go. That's working now. Good afternoon. My name's Dr. Robert Brand. I'm the Watershed Program Manager for the Cuyahoga County Board of Health. I am here today to support the proposed Cuyahoga County carry-out bag fee. I'd like to thank Sonny Simon for proposing this legislation. The legislation is important for human and non-human health, as well as for watershed and environmental protection. It's a voluntary fee. It's not a tax. The legislation also provides exemptions for small establishments, for customers enrolled in federal public assistance food programs, and others. Approximately 100 billion plastic bags are used in the US a year, which works out at about 308 bags per person per year. The implementation of this legislation has been proven to reduce the use of plastic bags, and it should reduce this from the 308 to 335. It depends whose figures you use, but it will certainly cause a reduction. Removing these pollutants is better than taking the ethically challenged view of doing nothing. Let Cuyahoga County be the first county in Ohio to actually do something about this, rather than being the last or following other counties. Many other states and cities in the US have implemented complete bans on plastic bags. These cities and counties and states have not collapsed. Their economies are thriving. Plastic bags are now amongst the 12 top items found along coastal shorelines, and this includes Lake Erie shoreline. Lake Erie, as we know, is used for recreation. People swim in it, and it's the source of drinking water for 11 million people. Single-use plastic bag pollute our environment and potentially impact on numerous aquatic species. We saw this in the 13-minute TED presentation last week as to exactly how these bags are accumulating as they move through the Great Lakes. This is the second most polluted of the 5 Great Lakes. I think it was 54 to 56,000 pieces of plastic per square kilometer. It takes a plastic bag about 300 years to photodegrade, which means the bags we're using now today will phytodegrade in 2,300. We're 2017. Thank you.
Mr. Dancy.
Good afternoon. I do not support this. We have 2,500 people who I serve, including the seniors, the disabled, especially the deaf folks. 2,500 receive EBT. 2,500 have 5 or 6 kids, children. If they got 5 or 6 children, if they have 5 or 6 children, how is that gonna happen? Why do they got to pay that fee on the bags? Okay, I left yesterday early because I had a death in the family. My elderly old grandmother passed away yesterday. I left early. Because I would have spoke about this on this yesterday because I had left early because I had a text from my sister said my grandma passed away at the hospital. So that was one of the issues what my grandma spoke to me about on Sunday. Okay, Sunday. And half of my family members spoke that to me again on last night. So I is not going to support this at all. Thank you.
No one else is signed in.
Do you, Madam Clerk, at this point, I guess we'll go forward and approve the minutes, and then we'll read the legislation. Okay. So we have minutes from October 18th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay. All in favor of approving minutes? Aye. Minutes approved. 2 abstain. Okay. Can we read 2017-0006?
Ordinance number 2017-0006, an ordinance enacting Chapter 721 of the Cuyahoga County Code to authorize a carryout bag fee for environmental remediation.
Thank you. So I just want to take a couple minutes before we have our speaker presentation to identify this legislation, what it is and what it isn't. This single-use bag fee is a choice. It's a fee. And that's different from a tax where there's forced payment. Everybody with this bag fee will have a choice to bring their own reusable bag and pay nothing at the point of checkout, or if they choose that they really need to have a single-use bag, they would pay the 10 cents. However, part of the fee is going to go toward purchasing for consumers in Cuyahoga County free bags. So there'll be an opportunity to pick up these bags, reusable bags, at senior centers, at libraries, at hopefully grocery stores. So there's no reason anybody actually has to pay a fee. And in addition, there's an exemption for individuals on EBT assistance who have those cards that will be exempt from actually paying 10 cents if they choose to purchase a bag. So why is this here? You know, why did I bring this forward? First of all, because we sit on the largest fresh body of water on the entire planet. That's huge. That's significant. This is where we get our water. And right now, what we found over the past 5 years through research by Dr. Sherry Mason, who was here by Skype last week, testified that our lake is extremely concentrated in plastic pollution. These bags comprise a huge part of that plastic pollution because in Cuyahoga County alone, every year, we consume 319 million of these bags. That's a lot of bags. And all but a small part of these bags end up in either our lake or trash in our landfill. That's a lot of bags. That's a lot of plastic. And when the plastic gets into the water, it photodegrades into tiny microplastics that end up inevitably in our water system because the filtering is not sufficient to exclude these particles into our water. Why does that matter? Because we know that these particles attract different types of toxins that glob onto the plastic particles. And I know this is technical, but it's important. And we're consuming pesticides, colorants, fire retardants, toxic chemicals that create poisonous pills. And we wonder why we see an increase in disease. We wonder why, because we're drinking this, we're taking showers with this. And notwithstanding the pesticides that glob on, the bags are made from petroleum, a big part. They're polymers that we are consuming. Plastic never goes away. And so what we're taking into our systems, we know from science, are endocrine disruptors. What does that mean? We're interfering with our hormones. We see infertility, a shrinkage of penises. We see this happening in species that are disrupted in this way. So this is why this is important. This isn't some feel-good suburban recycling program. This is a grave crisis, because if we don't have fresh water, guess what? We're done. This is the very life of this planet. So I'm emotional because people need to understand that we're not going to survive if we continue on a path of disposing of everything for our convenience. So that's the why, and we heard the science. And when we're looking down the road to future generations, we're going to look back and say, you know what, we just didn't want to be inconvenienced. And our children aren't going to have this fresh lake, and water is going to be the most coveted natural resource going forward on survival. And we're already seeing it when we have droughts, and people are coming to Lake Erie now to buy our water, to steal our water. So this is going to be the place in the future, and we are stewards of this planet and our lake, and this is in our backyard. And if we don't stand up for our own lake, when we have 200 jurisdictions in the United States taking a stand on this that don't even have this fresh water, we've got to really examine this. So my goal, I hope, through education is to allow residents and my colleagues to understand the gravity of this. We can't see the lake on fire like we did with the Cuyahoga River. That was easy. We saw it in flames. This is different. It's insidious. We can't see the pollution, but we can see it from NASA. They're taking pictures of the gyres in the ocean now. They can see this, and it comes from our lake. So that's the why. Now, we have received many emails. I think Jack Schron cited 600 at this point, and it's coming most likely from industries that profit from these bags. We've received retail merchant letters, Plastic Industry Association, who clearly profits from continuous use and production and sale of these bags. We've heard from the Forest Paper Association. So what we're hearing from it's a campaign that's organized. It's misinforming the people they reach by telephone and telling them it's a tax. It's not, it's a fee. People have a choice, and they're telling them that this hurts working families. Well, guess what? I've done everything I can to protect working families and give them a choice, to give them a free bag. I've exempted EBT in the legislation. But more importantly, clean water, clean air is a family value. Let's accept that. Because our families are impacted when they go fishing in the lake, when they feed their families, recreational fishing or feeding their families with a fish. Every specimen of fish that was surveyed had plastic in its system, every single fish. So this is our working families. They deserve clean water, they deserve clean air, and they deserve not to be exposed to toxic pollutants that are causing our children to be sick by asthma, autism, cancer, all kinds of disease. That we can see the link. So that's the why. And I'm just moving forward with hopefully having people with an open mind to understand that other places have done this and they've survived, and we'll do it here. So with that being said, I'm going to ask, do you have something?
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and my colleagues, as co-sponsor of the legislation, I just want to say that planet Earth is not on a sustainable path either for human life or animal and aquatic life, and we all have a responsibility to respond to the crisis and do something about it. And there's an old saying about think globally and act locally. I think this is one of the best examples I know of things that, something that we can do locally that would actually make a difference. And I know that some people have said, well, how is what we do here in Cuyahoga County gonna save Lake Erie and save the planet? Well, we just can't think that way if we're gonna survive. We have to each do our part, and we have to rely on millions of other people around the earth to each do their part. And if we each wait for somebody else to do something first, we're never going to get where we need to get. And so I believe in this legislation. I believe it'll be helpful. I believe it will not be burdensome. People will get used to it. If we're not willing to put up with a little bit of inconvenience to save our planet for the future, I would be very concerned about that. And I hope that that's not the case. And I look forward to working with you on this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so with that being said, I think we have Diane Bickett here from Solid Waste. Diane.
Okay, well, good afternoon. Thank you, Chairwoman Simon, for the invitation to speak today, and thank you for introducing this legislation along with Councilman Miller. I have prepared a presentation. Is it ready to load? Right. Okay. So last week you heard a presentation from Sherry Mason. Dr. Mason presented on the environmental and scientific impacts of plastic pollution. Today I would kind of like to bring it down and focus a little more on it as a waste management problem and provide some background information on that. So a couple of slides to start with to show sort of the national picture with regards to plastic generation. This slide simply shows the amount of plastic that's generated over time between 1990 and 2012 versus the amount that is actually recovered. Plastic generation is about 12.8% of our solid waste stream total, and only 8% is captured for recycling. So, and of that, just about 1%, 1 to 3% of plastic bags are captured for recycling. So there's a big disconnect in the amount of plastic that is produced, consumed, and actually recovered for recycling versus what is eventually disposed in a landfill or ends up being the plastic pollution that was mentioned here today. So in this slide, I'm just presenting to show that it's a challenge for the recycling industry. So this is shows the sort of the change in packaging we've seen over time. And it's a challenge for the recycling industry because we're not packaging things in glass anymore, which is recyclable, and in paper boxes that is more readily recyclable. Everything comes in plastic now. And the industry, our collection systems and markets are not set up to capture all of this plastic and turn it into a new product. And it's a very complex material to recycle because of its chemical makeup. So this is a slide that was prepared with information from the US EPA. And it just shows that the only segment of our packaging that is increasing over the last 12 years is cardboard and plastic, and then plastic film being one of those, almost 500,000 tons per year. So what happens to all those plastic bags in Cuyahoga County? Well, from what I have researched, about 1 to 3% is recovered for recycling, and there are limited options to collect those materials or collect those bags for recycling, which I'll explain later. But that material that is not recycled ends up landfills or roadside litter or marine litter. So really the issue is, the choices people make at the checkout to bring a plastic bag home can have a long-term impact on the planet. And if it takes 300 years for a plastic bag to photodegrade out in the environment, it will never degrade in a landfill. It'll sit there forever. So I want to kind of take those three components and talk about them individually. So landfilling, this map shows how the dots show the landfills that receive Cuyahoga County's waste. And because Cuyahoga County does not have any operating municipal solid waste landfills left, we export to 11 landfills in 9 counties. So this material we are dumping on our rural neighbors in Ohio. And that cost is about $40 per ton, and that excludes the cost to collect and transport that material. So it's probably at least double that when you add all that in. So there's a cost to all of us waste generators to bury all this garbage, including the plastic. So I tried to determine, what is the cost of landfilling plastic bags? And I referred to a 2010 waste composition study that the city of Cleveland prepared. And they measured, their consultant, their engineering firm, SCS Engineers, measured the amount of plastic film that was in the city of Cleveland trash. They determined that to be 8% of their waste stream. And so I extrapolated that against all the residential waste that was produced in Cuyahoga County by all the other communities and calculated that our communities are paying about $1.5 million per year to landfill people's plastic bags and other film. So a common argument is, well, we should just be recycling these bags. Well, I want to talk next about how that is a challenge. So in Cuyahoga County, we have 58 curbside recycling programs. None of those programs allow plastic bags in their recycling mix. The type of plastics they want are plastic bottles, plastic jugs, because those are readily sorted at the recycling plant. So our curbside materials flow to 4 material recovery facilities, and these are privately operated facilities. Companies like Kimball, Waste Management, Republic, and Rumpke operate. They constructed these facilities. They're about $10 to $20 million of sortation equipment in each one, private investment. And the plastic bags within their system, when they do get the plastic bags, because people are throwing them in there, end up winding up in the sortation equipment. And it's the number one problem for them in terms of cost and downtime, because they literally have to shut their equipment down, send their people into the equipment with bag cutters, and by hand pull all this plastic wrapping out of the machinery. And that's about 1 or 2 hours per day of downtime. So they don't want to see this material in their recycling facilities. And the only other option really is to encourage people to take their plastic sacks back to the grocery store for a retail collection. And, people do that. You go to Heinen's or Giant Eagle and you see the bins there. There are some markets for that material because it is clean, it is source separated, it is not mixed with cans and paper and the other material that we have to separate it from. So a little bit about these recycling markets. It's changing very quickly, starting in February of this year when China made a decision to ban most imports of plastic waste and other types of recyclables. But this chart here shows, just for reference, that about more than half, about 52% of the plastic film that is collected for recycling is exported, mainly to China, and then about 48% stays here in the US. And we talk about plastic film, that also includes clean plastic film from agricultural operations and commercial operations like shrink wrap and stuff. So it's not just plastic bags. So the domestic markets, in the US, we have Trex in Virginia and Novolex in South Carolina. They manufacture plastic film, they manufacture plastic decking. But of all the material that is collected of that film, just about 16% is plastic bags. So the export market is primarily China, and China was recycling about 52% of our plastic waste, but a new policy implemented by the China Customs Department called the National Sword is restricting many imports of recyclables from the U.S. into their country because they don't want to be our dumping ground anymore. So this is going to have major repercussions in our industry in terms of, we're collecting all this material. If we were sending it to China and we don't have the manufacturing capacity in the U.S. to remanufacture these things into new products here, what are we going to do with it? So the biggest challenge is this mixed plastic. So it's the garbage plastics, not the high-value plastics that are the milk bottles and the pop bottles, but it's all the other stuff like the clamshells and the styrofoam and the plastic film and all this stuff that is not marketable. And the industry does not have a solution for it. So they're cracking down. So this National Sword policy, again, we're still kind of tracking the industry and figuring out, I think everyone's trying to figure out what happens next with all this mixed plastic that we're currently collecting. So finally, there's the issue of plastic litter. What isn't getting recycled or landfilled is really just going out there loose into the environment. And plastic bags are a big component. I think this number is higher, but a statewide litter report in 2013 said that plastic bags comprise about 4.7% of all roadside litter. I think the number's higher. It's certainly probably higher on the beaches, as Robert mentioned. But public dollars pay for the cleanup. I spoke with Paul Cloder, who is the director of Court Community Service. That is the organization that you see on the roadsides picking up the trash. So they estimate that they spend about $500,000 annually just on litter cleanup, and that doesn't cover labor because their labor is court-assigned workers. So add to that another 50,000 hours of free labor, adds about another $500,000. So just through that organization, about $1 million annually in cleanup costs. And then there's the marine pollution that we've been hearing about through the other speakers, about 5.5 million pounds of plastic waste entering Lake Erie annually. So really, what's the solution? I think that waste prevention is a solution. This is a chart that shows the EPA waste management hierarchy that shows that waste that we don't create, our goal is to not create waste in the first place through source reduction and reuse, and then recycling and energy recovery and landfilling. But this legislation, I believe, it follows the concept of not creating waste in the first place being the most sustainable method of waste management. I believe this legislation fits with the county's other sustainability initiatives, its work around climate change and energy. It will reduce litter cleanup costs. It will reduce plastics entering Lake Erie. It will reduce landfilling costs. And I also believe it'll be a catalyst to create a more eco-conscious community. And I'd like Cuyahoga County to be the leader on this and be on the right side of this issue. So thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Any questions? Dale? Jeff? Chantel? Dale, you did? Okay, Jeff.
Thank you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that. Just a few. Yeah, Diane Pickett. Yeah. I understand that you have a desire to do this piece. Where are you with the rest of the trash bags and things of that nature? Because I look around here and and see a trash bag that we're going to probably take, and it's about the same size, it's a little bigger than, not much bigger than what you're talking about in this legislation. I assume it's not going to get covered by that. And when you take your trash out to the street, what does it go in? Does it go in a plastic bag?
Right. Well, that
Is that the same bag that's going to go to
we're
the landfill?
not going to be able to address every plastic bag, but it's the single-use bags through the retail that can have an impact. Certainly, you need to contain your trash in something, and plastic bags is the garbage bags that hold a large amount of material is the best
How many
solution
times
for
do you
that.
really reuse your trash bag?
I don't reuse my trash.
It's a one-time use too. So let's.
Well,
it just-
this legislation does not cover that. It's,
I understand that. So it just, you showed a picture of a landfill, and the majority of those bags look to be trash bags. They didn't look to be the bags that you're talking about in this
well, the
legislation.
study that
Are you
I referred to was stuff that was the loose film plastic that was contained in the bags after they broke them up. So,
No, I was just looking at the photograph you had of a landfill, and it was of those white bags and black bags that end up, everybody takes their trash out. I'm not sure what the solution is you're advocating for in regards to that. You're saying it's 300 years to break this down. And is this because you've been involved with landfills and studying that?
I was referring to Robert's or someone else's testimony on the amount of time it takes to photodegrade plastic within a plastic bag within the natural environment, but when it goes into a landfill, it will never degrade because landfills are designed not to have air, water, and sunlight enter them, so it will just sit there forever. So plastics overall is a problem. This legislation will address a significant part of that, which is the single-use plastic bags.
As will trash that might have steel or aluminum or titanium or any of the other materials that are going to sit without oxygen. I assume
Right.
everything sitting in the landfill is going to sit there regardless of what it is without oxygen to break it down.
That is, with the exception of maybe the food waste, but yes, that is true, and that's why the Waste District works to promote recycling of all kinds.
Yeah, when I hear things saying that this one won't break down, it's only fundamentally fair that you also say this one and this one and this one also won't break down once it gets to the landfill. The big items, is that correct?
Yeah, well, yes, yes.
I mean, other than the
That
garbage.
wasn't pertinent to this conversation, but that's true.
No, I just want to be consistent with facts and from that standpoint. Do you have any idea how many single-use bags that we're currently using within the county, ourselves and all of our trash?
I'm sorry, Jack, I'm not sure if you heard, it's over 319
No,
million.
in our county office, I'm sorry, I should have been
Oh,
more
the
specific.
county office? We
Yeah,
collected those, and you saw last week that just in the county office alone, we were able to recover over 340 of the bags I had put out just by being at the county single-use bags at the county headquarters.
I'm talking about the trash bags, not the ones that come
Okay,
from the
I'm not
store.
sure
We're
that
not
Diane
involved
is.
Trying to
with the
figure out
county
what the breakdown is.
operation, so I wouldn't have that information.
Okay, yeah, I just was trying to find out what the extent of the scope of your knowledge was that you're testifying to, and so I just,
Well, the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District, we cover the entire geographical expanse of the county, so all the 59 communities.
and so the majority of what you receive probably comes to you in a plastic bag.
We don't operate landfills, but
Okay,
we were just,
when it goes to the landfill, yeah,
material is bagged in a plastic bag, yes.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kind of what Jack was asking is, I was just curious what the other 92% is. I guess we were referring to the loose film plastic consists of the 8%. Is that what we understand? What is the other 92%?
I'm not sure when I mentioned 92%.
Well, you mentioned on the slide after landfilling, there's a slide, and I think that's the image that Councilman Schron is referring to. It's the cost of landfilling plastic bags and film. So maybe if you could enlighten us on the difference between the loose film plastic and as well as the trash bag, and their what the consistency is as it relates to the ability to degrade and the time frame. Is it different for trash bags?
No, plastic in a landfill is plastic in a landfill, and it's plastic in a landfill, we don't know if it will ever degrade, because
Okay.
we just won't be around long enough to find out. The way landfills are constructed, they are basically it's a bathtub where you're trying to prevent air, water, and sunlight from entering in. So anything you put into a landfill, you know, organic material will decay over time, produce methane, but the other inorganic materials will just sit there, and plastic bags included. So the slide I was referring to, where I referred to the City of Cleveland waste composition study, where they emptied rear load packers off the city trash routes from their city streets and at the Ridge Road Transfer Station. This was in 2010. They determined that about 8%, that was on the low end of the range, was film plastic and plastic bags. And it wasn't just the plastic bags that held the trash, it was all the other plastic film, including the blue bags that held the grocery store stuff, and saran wrap, and dry cleaning bags, and department store bags, and that type of thing, so.
Okay, so, and I guess I'm just a little confused now. You said the landfill, the things that go into the landfill will never degrade? There will,
I can't say never, but not within our lifetime,
and
or the next one, or the next one.
so they're not exposed to the elements?
Exactly. So landfills are constructed with a clay base, a geomembrane, which is like a rubber membrane, and then waste is put in, and then aeration tubes are put in to vent the methane or capture the methane. Leachate tubes are put in to capture the water leaching through, so that can be treated. And then every day the waste is covered with soil to prevent the material from dispersing, and then it's covered and sealed when the landfill is finally closed. So think of it as a bathtub with that is not meant to drain anything and is covered at the end of the day.
So if I understand you correctly, the elements that are in a landfill don't have any impact on our lake because they aren't, in fact, exposed to the elements as you just described. Is that safe to say?
That is true, but that is assuming that all the plastic we collect ends up in a landfill and none of it ends up floating off the trash truck when it's going to the landfill, or is floating out of a litter bin somewhere, or just discarded on the ground. So I think other testimony points to a lot of this plastic film just getting out there, and there's, you know, the presentation from last week showed that.
And then my apologies, it was not on my calendar. I was unable to see, but I will look at the presentation from last
Okay,
week.
good.
And then I guess the other question, if it takes 300 years, if that's the number or the time frame in which we're expressing will take the plastic bags to disintegrate, if you will, or degrade, I guess this might be more of a question for my colleague, Councilwoman Simon. Are the impacts that we are facing as it relates to these bags from 300 years ago, or the current bags? I mean, or are they degrading? Do you follow my question?
Okay, so you want to know what the current impact on the lake or in our landfills?
No, the lake. The testimony was 300 years for the bags to degrade, but there indication of some medical.
Oh, no, yeah, so you'll be able to, you missed a testimony last week, and there was testimony about the impact on the lake. And your question, so I started testimony with impact on the lake and the water, and then Ms. Bickett is here today to talk about the cost of the landfill from these bags. And your question is, what is the source of this current impact? Well, we know that Diane had the chart of the increase in the use of plastic bags and plastics, so it's going up. That's one of the most, I would say, rapid rate of increase of packaging now. Are these bags, and it started post-World War II when everything became a disposable, convenient item, and we've just seen an increase of the use, and that was, you know, with TV dinners, with these plastic bags. So it's increasing, usage increases. You go to and the way they find their into the water is when they don't make it to a landfill and they're in the stream. So it's current increase. I think that's your question. Is it coming from 300 years ago in the lake, or is it coming from, no, it's post-World War II. And it's just just the manufacturing industry is just pumping these things out, and that's why.
So I guess I would, with what you're saying is that the effect of the plastics is not strictly from the plastic bags, but just plastic products over the course of time have had an impact on our lives. Is that safe to say?
Absolutely, it's safe to say, but what we can safely say is 320 million plastic single-use bags are used in Cuyahoga County. So we can safely say that,
Okay.
yeah.
But I think, I'm not
Which
a
is significant.
scientist, but the other testimony pointed to the fact that plastics do not biodegrade like a plant would biodegrade and become food for something else. They leave microparticles that are being consumed by fish, and then the chemicals that are bound to those plastics are then seeping into the tissues, and that's what's causing some of that, the health hazard to all of us. So, the difference is it's not an organic material that would decay like something in nature would. And that is one of the big problems.
I would venture to say it's to me, clearly plastics are a problem across the board. I guess the question is it plastic bags is where I guess it's just start to address a larger problem is what our approach is going to be,
Yes.
or is that?
I would say that nothing we use for an average of 12 minutes should pollute the earth for 500 years. That's what I would say. These plastic bags on average are used for 12 minutes. And we go to the store. So that's the significance, is there's a choice and we use them an average of 12 minutes. And that's the difference, is we don't need to use these bags. And people are coming out and saying, well, I line my garbage cans with those and that means I have to go buy other bags. Well, no, it doesn't. There's all different things you can line your trash can with, if really that's what the emphasis or your goal is. You get buy bread, it comes in a bag, stick that in your trash bag. But, that's the difference between when you say there's this plastic pollution problem is out there. These are used just for 12 minutes and that's it. I went to the store to a restaurant with my colleagues, and all three of them got a plastic bag for their lunch, and they walked from Heinen's to the county building, and one of them had sushi in a container, needed a bag, and the other one had maybe something else, and all three of them proceeded from walking from Heinen's, going to the county building, taking their food out, took the plastic bags, and were throwing them in the trash. Well, at least they made it to the trash and not into the waterway, not into the recycling. And that's the difference when you say, oh, there's this huge plastic problem. Well, you know what? We don't need to use these things for 12 minutes and pollute our planet for 500 years. That's the difference.
I think a part of that is that the bags are just foisted upon us, so they automatically bag your sushi in a bag. They should ask, do you want a bag? And more, you go to a retail store and I find some people asking, and I thank them when they do. But, I think, we're sacrificing the planet for the sake of convenience, and we can't continue to do that, as Councilman Miller pointed out, so.
I think Council President.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Just to make a comment, I was very impressed with the presentation, the first presentation we had about the lake and about the way the pollution from the plastics builds up across the Great Lakes. And so we have a higher concentration in Lake Erie, and then even a higher concentration in Lake Ontario, and then, of course, out to the sea. It's a fair question, of course, to ask whether this, how much good this will do, how much will it matter. It's not a silver bullet. There's no question that just by passing this legislation, we're going to clean up Lake Erie or anything bigger than Lake Erie. But I've been around a while, and lots of times over the years, I found that we were discussing issues similar to this, I would say, in many ways, and that it was questionable whether, in some cases, whether the public, had caught up with where the policy needed to go, And many times, when you're trying to push the envelope on these kinds of issues, you do meet with a lot of resistance and a lot of questions and a lot of misunderstanding about it. And in my experience, in most cases over the years, and sometimes less time than you think, people's minds change, things change, and I would just use the example of how we think about cigarettes now, as opposed to how we thought about them 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and how much of a difference that what we've tried to do has transformed the way people live and the way people think about it, because we think about it entirely different. And I'm at an age where I grew up in a world where it was completely common, and to a place where it's not nearly as common. And so you can see how these things can change. What I'm impressed by is if we were the council in a small liberal college town, I'll just put it that way, if we were a council in a small liberal college town and we passed legislation like this, it would be a good thing. But it would have very little impact compared to the impact that this council can have. We are on the front line because we are on the Great Lakes. We are on Lake Erie. And we are one of the largest counties, we all know, in Ohio, and certainly the largest county on the Great Lakes. We have an unusual and unique opportunity that people in public office rarely get a chance to experience, where a simple majority of this county council can reduce the number of plastic bags in this county so dramatically that the impact is extremely real. This is not a phantom concept because of the size of this county. And so if you're one of 6 people on this council, you may never have another chance in your life to ever impact positively the environment in the way that you might have by supporting legislation like the legislation that Councilwoman Simon has introduced. And I think that you have to start with the goal, and you have to really feel the possibility of the power that you have as a member of this council at this time, which is so rare. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. And I have an open mind. Let me start there. I have an open mind, but I do have questions.
Okay.
I've gotten the robocalls, and there's no doubt in my mind those calls are in some industry related. I'm getting many calls from that area, but I know they're going to be genuine constituents that I represent that are going to have concerns, and I have to ask questions just related to what I believe my constituency will ask of me. So my first question, in your area of expertise, you've really laid out how the plastic bags have the challenge with the plastic bags. But what about the brown bags? Are they an issue at all when you go to the market? You have a choice of paper or plastic. And
Yeah,
tell me about paper.
There is, they have environmental impacts too. Yeah, I mean, you can recycle the paper bags. That is the one plus of those over the plastic bags are more readily recyclable. You can put them in your curbside bin, but there is an environmental cost to manufacturing those too. So converting people from this single-use bag, because the fee, I believe, is also on paper, to a reusable bag is preferable, because you will use your reusable bag 20 or 30 or more times. So and it's a change in mindset. I think it stops people in their tracks if they have to think about why this new fee is being implemented, and maybe they'll make other changes to other parts of their life that are more economically advantageous or environmentally advantageous.
So it's been said that the plastic bags, we find them degrading and being in our fish, which ultimately gets into us and all those things. Is that true of brown paper bag as well? Is that I'm trying to grasp the challenge that brown paper bags present.
Okay.
The question would be, why not just use brown paper bag as opposed to plastic? And if that's not a viable option, help me to understand why it would not be.
Well, plastic is a petrochemical. Paper is made from wood, so it is biodegradable versus plastic not being biodegradable if it's in the environment. But then paper bags also have additives and dyes and things like that that may not be, that might be a petrochemical too, that might not be good for the environment too. I don't know of any studies that have measured the amount of paper bag waste. I mean, I don't think you could measure it in the lake because it would just disintegrate. On land, it's a percentage of our roadside litter too. But I think the goal of this legislation is to address all single-use bags, whether they be paper or plastic, and drive consumers away from that towards reusable bags.
So is it your position, no on plastic, no on paper?
My position is paper is preferable to plastic, but no on both if we have a reusable
If you
alternative.
have a reusable, have you seen the reusable bags? Are you
Yes, I
familiar?
use them all the time.
Help me, I haven't seen it myself yet. Is it, when I go to the market, I may have a dozen bags, paper or plastic.
Yeah.
Is this reusable bag just one singular bag? Or are they the size of a plastic bag or paper bag?
So where do you do your grocery shopping, may I ask?
In this general area, the Heinens here,
Okay.
Cedar Heights, Cedar
Okay.
Road.
Well, Heinen's has them for
Dave.
sale at their checkout, so they're the size of a paper sack, and they have a square bottom, so they function as well as a paper sack. They have handles, they have a square bottom, they're durable, versus, and you can put more in them. So you're taking fewer bags home, when you use a reusable. So, when you go to a grocery store and they pack in plastic, they usually throw 1 or 2 things per bag, then they double bag it and you're coming home with 30 bags or whatever, if you have a large family. Versus when I shop with my reusable bags, I'm coming home with 4 or 5. So, I find that if you can remember to bring them to the store, people like them more than, the plastic alternative.
One
or the
thought,
paper.
one thought that I have is that I know we talk about the reusable bags peppered throughout the community, but why not all of the bags be at the point of use, which is at the appropriate supermarkets? If there's a place where you may have to pay 10 cents, then there should be a bag available for them to choose.
That would be the hope, that retail would want to work with us to be a partner instead of not wanting to move forward.
Does that sound like a challenge to the retail industry?
Maybe some local grocers would be willing to be a partner and be part of the future and have them at point of sale. That would be great with a promo.
Yeah, and I know all the stores I shop in have them available for sale. Even some of the retail clothing stores have reusable bags for sale. They're $1, so if we could bring, partner with them to offer them for our bags for a cheaper price, that would be preferable, obviously.
What stores what is the square footage? Are we measuring it by square footage? What stores would be
7,000 above.
and above? So that's basically supermarkets, but not a
Walgreens,
CVS.
CVS, no, Walgreens and
Or would it-
CVS.
Does the legislation allow for sufficient bags to be in all the county impacted stores?
Sure, we'll be working on that. Yeah, people will have an option. It's one of the only models that provide for county residents to get their own reusables at no cost. So really, this is, we'll have that as a major incentive for people to begin to.
It's been said that this is in place in other cities. Can you give me a few names of what cities this is already enacted?
Well, we know that just over 7 million Americans live in jurisdictions that have a ban, fee, or on plastic bags. And so Chicago, Seattle, Eugene, Oregon, Austin, whole state of California. And what was interesting about California is the retail merchants stood up against the petroleum industry in that state when there was a referendum on the ballot. And the retailers came around in that jurisdiction to support having the fee on paper and a ban on plastic. So we have 200 jurisdictions throughout, and I can get you Montgomery County, Washington, D.C., you've been to D.C. When you go to purchase something, you're asked whether you want a bag, and if you do, you pay for it.
You mentioned the 10 cents fee that is charged would be, how would it be distributed and used once collected?
Yeah, 60% goes into an environmental remediation fund, which will go toward defraying the cost of cleaning up the lake and the rivers and the streets, and communities where community court services goes into every year. There's will help bolster their ability to pick up trash in neighborhoods and to purchase these bags.
And 40% goes.
4 cents back to retail because they have some cost to train and administrative expenses.
Thank you.
Which will help them because they have a huge overhead to purchase these bags. Cost them a lot of money to purchase paper and plastic, and this would alleviate their overhead burden and then have a stream of income to help them become more efficient with getting on board with this bag fee. So
I would imagine the county providing bags would help alleviate their costs.
this will help retail. It's just going to be a little glitch getting people used to it here, but, you know, Kenya banned plastic, Rwanda banned plastic. Ireland's fee was the first, and they have reduced their consumption of single-use plastic by 90%. So we know this works in the jurisdictions where it's been instituted. It totally reduces it. So, thanks, Diane.
Thank you.
And so next, Mike Foley, did you want to come up quickly?
Thanks, Councilwoman. I'll try to be quick. So I know you've received, as council, you've received communications from folks who are opposed to the fee. And Councilwoman Simon shared with me a letter from the plastics industry and kind of asked me to look at it and react to it. So I wanted to do that if I could real quick and kind of go through their arguments and talk to you about some of the problems I thought that they had in their arguments. So one was that they said that the proposed fee is regressive and disproportionately paid by working poor and those who can least afford it. And so obviously we know that someone who has an EBT card is not will not have to pay the fee, and that small centers under 7,000 feet, small grocers won't have to charge the fee. I also thought it was interesting that the American Progressive Bag Alliance, which shared the information from you, I mean, we've had a number of tax cuts over the years in terms of getting rid of progressive taxes, and I don't know that they've ever, you know, I used to be in the legislature, and we used to have tax policy in front of us all the time, and I don't remember them ever complaining about getting rid of taxes that were more progressive in nature, which made our tax system more regressive, basically. So I just thought there was an irony that these guys were complaining about making tax policy or fee policy more regressive. Second is that they want to create, the statement was that there's a creation of a new fee with additional administrative costs that hurt local businesses. Well, obviously the 10-cent fee, 40% of it goes back to the local merchant to deal with some of these issues. So if there's issues that the retailers think that should be higher or lesser, then they should at least say that. But this is one of the reasons why this 4-cent fee is put in place. It goes back to the retailers to deal with their administrative hurdles they may have. 3, they said many communities have considered plastic bag fees and rejected them because they cost a lot. There have been some communities that have rejected plastic bag fees, but it's not because of cost. Most of it is because that state law has preempted local communities in a number of jurisdictions from imposing plastic bag fees. So in Texas, I think let's see, Texas, Arizona, Alaska. There's a couple states that basically say local jurisdictions cannot impose plastic bag fees. And so cities, instead of fighting the state preemption laws, basically redacted their legislation, allowing them to do plastic bag fees. So I guess the majority of cities that have gone backwards in terms of plastic bag fees is because state laws basically said you can't do this. They said there's alternative bag fees can add thousands to a grocer's annual budget, far in excess of most stores' profit margins. Look, again, this is why we put Councilwoman Simon put the 4-cent fee in there is to address any administrative burdens that they have. And, I should say some of this stuff has to do with software, right? So you've got cash registers and software that has to be put in place, which is only a one-time fee, right? So you need to address this maybe one time in your kind of computer system, and the fee will cover that. The 4-cent fee goes on for the life of the life of the legislation, and so I think that retailers are going to be more than offset by the money coming back to them from the fee. 5, it's not clear that county council has the right to levy this fee and redistribute proceeds to private entities. That's one of the contentions that the plastic industry made. I think the law department has kind of done analysis on this, and I think Cuyahoga County believes that because we're a charter county, we have the ability to levy this fee countywide. I don't think that's a legal issue that stands muster. 6, even if plastic bags disappear, waste and litter problems won't improve. It's just not true. I mean, I think that last week's testimony from regarding lake pollution, and we've had people come and give just kind of quick 3-minute comments about just doing stream cleanups and river cleanups and beach cleanups. It does reduce plastic pollution by not having as many plastic bags in the sphere, but also it's not the evidence from cities across the country. So San Jose reported a 76% decline in creek litter, a 59% drop in roadside litter, and 69% drop in storm drains. I'll share this with you. I have it somewhere. But over and over and over again, there's consistent reduction in the amount of litter reduction due to plastic bags where fees have been implemented. And I'll put this in a table and I'll send it off to you so you have that information. 7, plastic bags alternatives have an impact on the environment. The issue here is if you use a recyclable plastic bag, that is a reusable plastic bag, that some of that has a higher carbon content because it's sturdier and stronger. Well, the idea is that will be reused, right? So it takes 3 uses of a regular plastic bag to equal 1 use of a reusable plastic bag. So once you use your bag 3 times, you are carbon positive. You're your net good in terms of reducing carbon emissions and greenhouse gases due to the creation of that plastic or that reusable bag. And then the last argument they had was plastic bag regulations cost a lot and don't deliver many benefits. And, I just don't think that's the case or been borne out. We've got cities across the country that have implemented plastic bags. They've seen a great reduction in the use of plastic bags. They've seen a great increase in the amount of reusable bags. So there's less litter going into the atmosphere and into the environment. It's reducing costs in terms of stream cleanup, river cleanup, water cleanup, landfill cleanup, as Ms. Bickett said earlier. There's a positive net effect in terms of putting these fees on, having seen a reduction in the use of plastic bags and positive environments for positive impacts on the environment. So I'll leave it at that. And I will send you copies of the data we have on all the cities across the country.
Thank you.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
So Director Foley, and again in that same vein of the plastic versus paper bag, what is the cost to the retail industry? If they're already paying for plastic and paper, we're providing an environmentally sound bag. They're going to start charging 10 cents for the plastic. What is the expense and burden on them by adding 10 cents to the bag? Help me to understand the administrative burden on them.
So they're going to have
Or
to
whatever
train
the
people.
burden
Yeah,
is.
Councilman Jones, through Councilwoman Simon. They're going to have to train their staff, right? So they'll have to change their kind of software for their cash registers. They will have to collect that money, remit it, and send it to the county. 60% of that money they'll have to send to the county for the remediation fund. They will. Over time, right now they purchase bags. So we get all these free bags. Right? So they're going to have to purchase a lot less bags over the future because people will start using reusable bags. That's the purpose of the legislation, right? Is to incentivize people to use reusable bags. So the more that people use reusable bags, there's a lower amount of actual, plastic bags, one-time bags that they have to purchase and sell to. Or to give to people coming to their store. So those are, there's burdens, right? But that's why that fee is there to take care of those administrative burdens that they have.
If what we've heard to this point that brown paper bag is better than plastic, what if the fee was waived for the use of the brown paper bag as well, and not just for the environmentally sound bag? And then people begin to use what's already there as opposed to the plastic.
Well, Councilman Jones through Councilwoman Simon. There are environmental issues with brown paper bags. I think Ms. Bickett talked about them earlier, but they also, once they're thrown into a landfill, they don't biodegrade as easily as if they are sent into a recycling center, right? They are recyclable, no doubt about it, but a lot of times they're not recycled and they're just thrown into the landfill. When they're in a landfill, and especially after a landfill is capped and closed, there's no air, there's no water, and those things, they don't biodegrade as easily. So they stay in the landfill a lot longer, and they take up a lot more space. So I think that, look, the perfect, the question is, do you want the perfect to be the enemy of the good? And it's, I think one of the questions that, if we don't solve the question about every piece of plastic or every piece of material that carries garbage or some container, if we don't solve it all, or should we not do any legislation? I don't think that's the case. I think the legislation that's in front of you works pretty well. I think that that papers are probably a little bit better than the plastic, but I don't think they are they're the best, right? And I think that there's this. I think Councilman Miller was right, is that, in a year from now, when no one will even know the difference, that this is just be the kind of the way of life, and we will be solving problems both with paper and plastic, and helping to clean up our environment.
If I could say one thing and we'll get going. Well, if there's more questions, that's fine too, but the front end of the paper bag is impactful to the environment as well, because we divert water, land, we cutting down trees and putting a lot of resources on the front end of that. And it's unnecessary to keep producing single-use bags because it impacts our the whole forest. And there's a lot of energy that goes into making paper bags and the transport and just everything on the front end of the paper. And it costs retail 4 times as more to have to purchase paper. It's cost to the retail businesses. That's why they keep pushing plastic bags on the consumer.
Paper's more expensive than plastic?
Correct. About 4 times as much.
And that's correct. And just the resources going into creating them, it's just unnecessary in the first place, I think, but it is more expensive, and it's more energy and kind of environmentally damaging to have to go through, take trees, make them into plastic or paper bags when there's other ways to take our stuff from here to there.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thanks.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Barr.
So can you give us a cost of plastic bags? How much they're costing the retailers? An estimate? I think that's kind of what the gist of what Councilman Jones was getting at.
I don't have it on me. I'll find it for you. I'll get it for you.
So you don't know how much it costs the retailer for plastic bags?
I've got it. I've got the research somewhere. I don't have the number in front of me, but I'll get it. I'll send it over to you as soon as I can.
And then you referenced the letter. I didn't see it in our information. Is that something we can get a copy of? The letter that came from, who did you say?
It was I hate to say it was, something facetious, but it was the plastic people. It was the Plastic Industries Association of America and the American Progressive Bag Alliance.
Okay.
And that's why I was being a little funny about the progressiveness.
No. The one thing that I think my questions may have gotten kind of lost in translation, but the questions that both, I think, all of my colleagues have presented are questions that we ultimately have been asked or anticipate from our constituents. And I completely understand Council President Brady's explanation. There is resistance to change, and then change is necessary. And I don't want to seem as I am against the legislation, because I think that might be the energy that I'm getting from Councilwoman Simon. But what it is that I want to have a full understanding, so that when I am out in the community, I can speak to these issues intelligently. So I look forward to more productive conversations regarding this matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Miller?
One question that's been asked of me is what the county's administrative cost is going to be to run this program. Do we have any information on that yet?
Through staff, estimating less than a small fraction of the 1 cent that perhaps we might need to help boost consumer affairs and do a little auditing. But we're already set up to do this through the bed tax system, and it's going to be very little expense to us because we're set up to do it. Do you have anything? Okay.
I just want to, so I want to get that information to you, Councilwoman. I do want to make sure that David Nader from our office has actually gone out in the last couple of weeks, and actually has gone out into the community just to kind of get a sense of where people's heads are at. And at least the folks, he's talked to over 500 people throughout the county, everywhere, every council district, and overwhelmingly people are in favor of doing this. So at the 10-cent fee level, and I sent you an email on this yesterday, but so if you could go back and look at your email, but it's like a 2-to-1. Folks are both concerned, and they think this will be helpful in reducing pollution into the environment, and are okay with a 10-cent fee. So just FYI, I know you're getting a lot of emails from folks who are saying, hey, this is a bad thing. We don't want to see this happen. But at least kind of David, who's gone out and talked to people, who's out in the community, folks are in favor of this.
You said David?
David Nader, yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'll say this. I certainly want to protect the community and the environment. I don't think there isn't anyone who doesn't want to make our lakes safe and clean and keep ourselves healthy. But as we do this through the legislation, I look at the big picture of this legislation, and I see an excellent bag, environmentally sound, and to me it's a carrot. And it's not me, I'm actually using the illustration that a constituent gave me. They said, well, the carrot of the bag is a good thing. I don't really have a problem with the carrot of the bag. But the stick of the 10-cent fee is what I have an issue with. I don't want to have to pay 10 cents, to keep me from using plastic for paper, for the environmentally sound bag. I'd like to use the bag, but don't hit me with the 10-cent fee as a result. So a carrot stick for me, was almost a great illustration of how many will see it, and the question is, where will they fall? Will they say, oh, well, I'm okay with it, or I plan to go into the community and listen to my constituents. I represent the bulk of public housing. I'm not sure where David went, but that's where I've got to go. And we will see. And now the EBT card is going to, certainly those who are on cash assistance, they will not be impacted by this. but there is still an incredible amount of low-income individuals who are not receiving assistance, who will still be impacted. And as the community becomes more aware, then I need to know what their thoughts are, those who have elected me. So that's ultimately where I'm coming from, to get a better sense of the stick, although I support the carrot. Okay.
Well, the great news is that the people don't have to pay a dime.
Okay.
That's the best news of all.
Okay.
People don't have to spend a dime.
So,
There's
yeah.
a choice.
So the carrot is, I mean, the stick is easily riddable by using, bringing in your own bag, which I think the councilwoman is trying to raise money to make sure those are readily available for, even if you don't have an EBT card, there will be plenty available for people who are low income seniors to be able to take advantage of.
Thank you, Mr. Foley. So Councilwoman Brown is correct. I'm quite passionate about this because I look at the future and I look at the past. And I know that people like me stood up against the tobacco industry when they wanted to refuse to put labels on cigarettes, when people stood up against DDT, and when people stood up for issues that might not be popular or difficult. We know that these issues, as Council President Brady indicated, end up on the right side of history. And absolutely, I'm going to stand up for the residents of this community like 200 other jurisdictions have done. And I understand people need to learn about this, but my passion is to move us forward and not to be held back by industry fear-mongering and profiteering. So with that being said, we're going to adjourn, unless there's public comment.
No one has signed in.
Thank you.